What is up, NFL fans, and welcome back to another episode of For Your Viewing Pleasure. I'm Jeff Hartman, joined by Wesley Coleman as we shake the dust off of Week 4 and get ready for Week 5. Welcome to the show, Wesley. What's up?
Hey, man. We're starting to we talked about it last week. We're a quarter of the way through the season. We're starting to maybe get an idea of what some teams are. Maybe.
I don't have any clue.
Probably not. No, probably not. There's a lot of 2-2 teams in the NFL.
Yeah. And honestly, when you get some of those 2-2 teams like the Ravens and the way they looked against Buffalo, and you're like, that's a really good 2-2 team. And so you still don't know. I still don't think we found that leveling point in the league where we know what's
Agreed.
about to come. But what was your takeaway from Week 4? Anything in particular?
It's just more of kind of like drawing teams to the middle of like there's teams that I don't know if anybody's out of their division. The teams that we consider to be competitive, I don't know if they're anybody's eliminated yet. There's not like a 4-0 versus an 0-4
Right.
that's really concerning. But there's a lot of injuries, and there's a lot of teams that I think still have. I don't know. This quarter of the way through the season, I thought we would know more, but I think there's some teams with terrible records that are going to be in the playoffs.
This is what the NFL wants. They want a big muddled mess. They want games to matter. They want teams and fan bases to stay engaged. And so let's look ahead at Week 5 in the National Football League. In case this is your first time catching the program, what we do is we take a look at games and we look at categories. So must-see television, fantasy lineup games, sneaky good matchups. They could only watch one game of the week, and then obviously my favorite, the dud of the week. Now, before we even start, I'm just going to lay out the primetime slate so that everyone's aware of what's coming up. Thursday Night Football is Buccaneers at Falcons. NFC South, say what you want. Sunday Night Football is Steelers hosting the Dallas Cowboys. And so that's fun. I think that's going to be an intriguing matchup. And then Monday night, Saints at Chiefs. It's going to be a good one too.
Yeah, so, it's good by the NFL when you put two premier teams in the NFL on Monday night. You don't have to have two different games.
I hate that. I mean, this is a programming show, so like, it doesn't work for me. Like, I don't like it.
It's bad.
Okay, so I'm not alone.
One, there is no red zone. I mean, you literally have to have two TVs now, which I have two TVs in my living room during football season. I always do, so I can do it. But I think that's normal for most people. So I think it's terrible. But now it also helps.
To have two televisions in one room. I don't have two TVs in one room. I watch on my phone because YouTube TV gives you the option of having the dual screen.
Yeah, I do the dual screen.
It's just for me. I'm like, I mean, last night was easy. On Monday night, we're recording this on Tuesday. Monday Night Football this week was easy. The Dolphins game was almost unwatchable. I have no interest in watching Mason Rudolph anymore. I've done that enough as a Steelers fan. And so let's watch the Lions. And that was a high-scoring game between them and the Seahawks. So at least there's only one. I hate how they dilute the product sometimes. But let's talk about must-see TV. Wesley, what are you putting in must-see television this week in terms of games?
So, I mean, there's only a few games where I think you're looking at both teams kind of being interesting and having a lot of questions about them. I'm going to go right off the beginning, a game that you should have had marked at the start of the season and is back to being interesting. It's Baltimore versus Cincinnati. The Bengals have figured out how to do offense again. They should have a better record. They just ran into a buzzsaw 2 weeks ago. It's the Washington Commanders and Jaden Daniels, what he did to them. Yeah. But Baltimore beating Buffalo makes you start questioning, like, there's nobody can answer who's the best team in the AFC. And you can make a case for 4 or 5 teams and you're not wrong. And Baltimore riding themselves against the Cowboys and the Bills, it's heading in that direction. So Baltimore Cincinnati is a game that I would not miss.
I'll go another route, and I know you're probably thinking I'm going to go with the homer pick. I'm not yet. Maybe I'll let you do that. But I'm going to go with actually Bills-Texans. The Bills-Texans in Houston, both teams are 3-1. The Texans have done it in a really weird way. Like, they're not dominating anyone. The Buffalo Bills dominated everyone and then went into Baltimore and got their doors blown off real quick. I mean, it was literally the first play, 87-yard touchdown by Derrick Henry. So I'm going to go Bills-Texans. I like that the divisional matchup that you mentioned, but I'm going to go with Bills-Texans. Any thoughts on that game?
Yeah, I mean, the Bills have been two completely different teams the last 2 weeks.
Yep.
And the Texans haven't been great. And I mean, the Texans being 3-1 sounds good, but the way they've gotten there hasn't been pretty. It's definitely not the way that they were last year. And I think that they're the only 3-1 team that has a negative point differential too. So the Texans have some problems. So it's definitely one to watch because one of those teams needs to probably convincingly win, to prove that they are like a real contender and they can recover from what they've looked like.
Any other games you would label as must-see TV?
I mean, I mentioned him a minute ago, but like right now with what he's doing, it doesn't matter who they're playing. Jaden Daniels is must-watch TV. He's set a record for completion percentage over a 4-game span, not to start a season, not for a rookie, for any quarterback in the NFL since at least 1950. That's as far back as they could go. He's had the highest completion percentage over a 4-game span ever. And this is a rookie that a lot of people thought, like, yes, he was drafted highly, but was going to come in and have problems on a team that wasn't predicted to be that good and was predicted to have problems. And again, it's 4 weeks, but over 4 weeks, he's one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, period.
Yeah.
I think, and he's been fun, and like the amount of publicity he's getting again in Washington, there's a story there and people are liking it. And I think that he's just going to be one of those players that's fun to watch. He's putting on the field what people thought and hoped they would see from Anthony Richardson. For years, what people hoped Justin Fields would be with that dual threat. And maybe he's figuring that out, but he's coming into the league. What people hoped Caleb Williams was. Jaden Daniels is that guy right now. I don't know if he can sustain it for an entire rookie season, but right now he's the guy.
The only comparable thing player I would say is CJ Stroud last year. When CJ Stroud came to the league, everyone was like, well, I don't know. He wasn't drafted first overall. I'm not sure if he's that guy. It's going to take him some time. And he took the league by storm and went all the way to the playoffs, wins a playoff game. And now year 2, things are maybe catching up a little bit. There's a lot of tape out there, and NFL coaches are still good coaches for the most part. And so I'm looking at it and saying, okay, maybe that's the line. Maybe that's the comp if I'm trying to give him a comp for what he's doing so quickly in the league. But we'll see. It's going to be, they play the Browns this week. That's going to be interesting. I'll go ahead and say that my other must-see, and this is not being a homer, I think Steelers-Cowboys on Sunday night is going to be a very entertaining game. It's in Pittsburgh. Steelers have only played 1 home game yet this year. They've played 3 on the road, 1 at home. And Dallas is a high-scoring team. I'm looking at their scores. They have scored a minimum of 20 points every game, with their biggest output being, they scored 19 against the Saints when they lost that game. But the Cowboys are putting up points. They are an offensive team, and they're going to have to try and win this game in a shootout because their defense is struggling. They're going to be without both edge pass rushers in Lawrence and Micah Parsons, most likely. Parsons has not been ruled out yet. But it's okay, this offense going against the Steelers defense. And the Steelers defense did surrender 27 points last week. But I think they'll find their footing, especially at home in primetime. I think this is going to be a very entertaining game. And I think it's going to be 2 storied franchises. You talk about the branding of the NFL. People think of those big name franchises. What do you think about the Sunday night game, Wesley?
Yeah, I think it's one that the loser of the game is going to look really bad and probably have a bad story about them. And I mean, even Pittsburgh could lose this game, be 3-2 and be in first place and feel terrible about themselves.
I agree.
Because I'm not sure who they've played or who's played well and really challenged them yet. I mean, in their 3 wins. So it's gonna be the story of, well, they beat these teams, but once they played a couple, somebody okay, they've struggled, and so it's just a long season where you get worn down. And the Cowboys, they lose, they're 2-3, could be in 3rd place in their division, behind 2 games behind Washington, if they win. And I mean, again, the loser of this game is gonna have a negative story, even if it's Pittsburgh, that'll still be in first place.
It's true. That's a really good point. The narrative surrounding the loser of this team is going to be strong. It's going to be really strong. So let's go to our next category, the fantasy lineup games. So you're looking at the slate of games here. You're looking at potential games that could have significance for fantasy owners. And it's also a game that you're probably not watching unless you have these players in your fantasy lineup. Where are you leaning with this one?
I mean, just from offensive output standpoint, Baltimore and Cincinnati have plenty of players. They're gonna be in your lineup and score points. And I said Baltimore. Did I say Baltimore, Cincinnati? Yeah.
Yeah.
So plenty there. There's probably times that you benched some of these players in the first 2 weeks of the season, thinking that they were done. You might have cut some players that you're now trying to pick back up. But there's definitely some offensive firepower there with Baltimore and Cincinnati.
I agree with that one. I'm going to, because we already talked about that with must-see TV, I'm going to do another must-see TV game that I had mentioned. Bills-Texans is going to have a lot of players. Nico Collins has just exploded. I don't know if Joe Mixon will be back in the lineup yet. He's still coming back from that ankle injury. But you look at Buffalo. I mean, Buffalo maybe don't have the playmakers they once did. They're not getting some contributions from some of the receivers that they thought they were going to. But I think that's a game for sure that's going to have some fantasy contributions. Is there another game you're looking at?
Well, I mean, just another one. I used this concept last week, but I mean, the Packers and Rams probably have a lot of people on their roster that you drafted and that you can't play now. Besides maybe their two starting running backs, Josh Jacobs and Kyron Williams. Outside of that, I bet everybody went in, they drafted some quarterbacks, they drafted some receivers, drafted some tight ends, and you might not be able to play any of those guys right now, whether they're hurt or still playing. You got a lot of pickup to do from what we thought would have been like a big offensive fantasy fun game at the start of the year.
Yeah. Now I'll go with another one, San Fran and Arizona. Arizona's been giving up a lot of points. And you look at the 49ers, when they finally got Deebo Samuel back last week, everything started to kind of work itself out. They scored 30 points against the Patriots, and they've been scoring some decent points. When you look at the box score just from last week, I mean, you're looking at a 49ers team. Again, Christian McCaffrey, I want to ask you your thought on this, where he has this Achilles tendonitis in both of his legs. I'm not a doctor. I know that that's not good. We'll put it that way. I don't know. What's your take on that?
Man, so when he got drafted by the Panthers and came in, I was a fan of his coming out of Stanford, and I thought he was dynamic. I also thought he was too small to have a long career as a running back in the NFL. And he proved that for the first couple of years, and that's why he got traded to San Francisco. And then he's definitely worked at bulking up and putting on some muscle and staying healthy. But he's just too small of a guy. And he got that huge contract, almost $20 million a year over multiple years. He would have been a guy that was on my team. It would have been incredible when he was healthy, but I would have always been scared to give him a contract for a few years. And I bet he has lots of different things. And I don't know if it's probably not typical tendonitis, but he's worked a whole lot to put on a bunch of muscle that's actually bigger than his body frame. And I mean, it makes him look like a running back, but he's a completely different body than he was a few years ago when he came into the NFL.
That's a good point.
But going
back to the 49ers, I mean, Jordan Mason rushes for 123 yards last week against the New England Patriots. Jawan Jennings is leading that team in receiving. Deebo Samuel's back. George Kittle had a touchdown last week. So for all those people that picked up 49, Brandon Ayuk still very average. That's neither here nor there. But a lot of people had drafted a ton of 49ers. So this might be a game that you would point to and say, okay, this is one that you want to keep your eye on. All right, let's go to the next category. Sneaky good matchup. A game that maybe is not getting the attention that is catching the national media's, eye for whatever reason, but you think could be a good game. Where are you thinking on this one?
This is a real tough one just based on kind of most of the ones that you would consider sneaky good kind of have some talk about them. I'm going to say the Jets in Minnesota.
Yeah,
you're going to call it a big game, but honestly, people still aren't taking Sam Darnold seriously, and people are not giving the Vikings credit for the coaching that they're doing on the offensive and defensive side. And this is a team that you're not going to want to be in a dogfight with in the playoffs. And they're not going to have the best quarterback, and they are going to have the best wide receiver. And there's going to be times that they don't have the best player, but really good matchup they're putting together. And if the Jets don't start looking better, and I don't think they can, we're getting really close to a pretty crazy storyline there that's probably going to get super dramatic, because I think you've got a bad coach and you might have a Aaron Rodgers that just doesn't have it anymore. Now, again, he could be working his way back to it at his age, but there's going to be some drama and some crazy stories coming out of there with demands from Aaron Rodgers, and then the coaches talking back and somebody getting fired. But this isn't going the way the Jets hoped.
No. But if the Jets find a way to beat the Vikings,
they're back in.
It's all good. Right with the world.
Yep.
They're 3-2. This game is in London, so 9:30 a.m. Do you like those games?
I mean, I liked going to them. I've been to a few of them, and
have you? Okay, cool. That's
no, I really do like it. So, I mean, Sunday's my football day, so I just get up and go to the gym a little bit earlier, and I come home and I start watching football at 8:30 instead of at noon or 9:30 and 1, like your time.
Yeah.
So, no, I'm a big fan of it. It's to put some football on and start watching. I love it. Give me the whole day
affair. It's an all day affair. I'm going to say, the Browns Commanders, I think, could be a sneaky good matchup, but you brought that one up already. I'm going to say Monday night, Saints and Chiefs is going to be a good game. I don't think it's going to get a lot of attention because the Saints have dropped their last 2 games after their red hot start offensively. But if they could somehow, some way find that offense, not maybe to the extent where it was almost 90 points in 2 weeks, and we all talked about that, but this Chiefs team is not scoring a ton. And they're going to be without one of their best receivers this week as well, whether he tore his ACL or not, which has not been solidified as of this being recorded. He's not playing this week. So I think the Saints have a legitimate shot here to go into Arrowhead and win. I'm sure you agree as a Saints fan.
Yeah, I mean, this game and the setup of these two teams is very typical of what the NFL is these days. The Saints are literally 2 plays away from being 4-0. In the last minute of each of the last 2 games, they've lost the game. And the Kansas City Chiefs are 2 plays away from being 2-2. And there's a case to be made that they're 3 plays away from being 1-3. Like that, the Chiefs have been very close to losing 3 of their games. So
you're not saying the NFL wants them to win or anything, are you?
Man, I don't know, but
there could be a case made for sure.
I don't think they want a song being written about the Chiefs losing. That's for sure. So no, I agree. Like this is a game that can go either way. The Saints have had a great offensive game plan going into games. They've dealt with some injuries, but they showed this last week with at least scoring enough points against the Falcons. They can deal with that. If Taysom Hill comes back and is healthy, I think the Saints can make this competitive. And then I think it comes down to the last couple of minutes, and we'll see what the referees do if they make an impact.
They will. They always do. And it just always happens to be in the Chiefs' favor. But let's go to the last category. You could only watch one. If you're looking at the slate of games, you're like, okay, I can only pick one. I'm picking this one. Which game is it?
It would probably be Dallas and Pittsburgh. I've liked Justin Fields as a quote unquote athlete and player. I think he was in a bad position in Chicago, and I think that trying to just make him a regular quarterback was not working for them. But I also thought he made some bad decisions. And if he's this many years into the NFL, if he's getting coached right, he can be a good player. I think he's between Jalen Hurts and Lamar Jackson. And I say between that because I think he has the potential to be better than Jalen Hurts, but maybe not quite Lamar Jackson level. But he's somewhere in there, and he could compete with Lamar Jackson level, who won an MVP. So I think Pittsburgh is bringing him along slowly. I think they've got a lot more they can pull out of him in the next 10 games, and they're going to let him take some risks. We'll see if that pays off, if he can not make the mistakes. Dallas has got a defense that has been terrible, but has a lot of superstars. If you get pressure on Fields and make him make a mistake, they do have guys who can catch the ball on the other side of their cornerbacks. So I think this is a good matchup. I think I think there's going to be national storylines out of the winner, probably the loser more than the winner. Actually, I don't know if the winner is going to get tons of credit. I think it's going to be the negative story.
Yeah.
But I will say I think that it's a game that I would watch. I'd be interested in, and I'd be definitely hoping that the Cowboys lose.
And I agree with you. The Steelers do need to eventually take the kid gloves off Justin Fields and let him actually be himself. And I wish they would, and they've been awful with this so far. They just started dipping their toes into the water of design quarterback runs. Not, okay, the play's breaking down, I'm just going to run. Let's design runs. And that's something, if you watch Philadelphia, they succeeded. I mean, for years with Jason Kelsey, especially because he was a big part of that. Those design runs, both in the interior and on the edge, getting Jalen Hurts out there using his athleticism. They can do that with Justin Fields. They just haven't done it yet. And I get it. Like you said, take him in slowly. Totally understand it. I think it's going to be a good game. I think I can speak for almost every fan of an NFL team that cares about their team in the division. I love watching AFC North football. So if Steelers are out of it, and we've always said on this show, we put our fan bias aside, I would probably watch Ravens Bengals. These two teams are always competitive. These games are always hard fought. It's in Cincinnati. Bad stuff happens in that stadium. Not going to go there. But still, Ravens coming off a huge win. Bengals, their first win. This will be huge. This is their first division test for both teams. So I think that's the game. If I'm not watching the Steelers, that's the game I'm watching. I love watching AFC North ball.
To be honest, that's my answer. I just didn't want to make you pick the Steelers. I was doing you a favor. I knew that those were the two games, and we'd get there.
For sure, man. All right, now the question is: are we going to have the same dud of the week? Because there's a couple nominees for dud of the week on this slate of games, and I'm curious where you're going to go first. I'll let you go first.
There are two that really stick out to me as just I can't make an excuse of why I'd watch them. But right now, like, I have no interest in watching the Miami Dolphins play football.
Yes, there it is.
And I listen, I get it that they lost their good quarterback and they've put in people who aren't good quarterbacks since then. But I think this is putting a kink in the is Mike McDaniel like a great offensive mind and all that, because he's getting nothing out of this. That's not really just like accidental plays. So Miami and New England, that sounds boring. It may be a 2-0 game. I'm not sure. And I can't tell you who would win that. Just either quarterback could blow that one. But I'm not watching the Jacoby Brissett revenge game against Miami.
Gosh, he's got a lot of revenge against a lot of teams. He's been around. I'm gonna go. There's two games other than this that I could go. Actually, close to three. There's I guess some bad games.
Yeah,
I'm gonna go Colts Jaguars. There's nothing intriguing, especially if Joe Flacco is the quarterback. If Anthony Richardson's held out because of the hip, I don't need to see Joe Flacco and Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence has looked awful, and they just gave him so much money. And so there's a part of me that's kind of chuckling inside. But at the same time, like that, I'm sorry, there's just nothing intriguing. The Steelers just played the Colts. I just watched them, and yes, they won. But there's nothing about, if Anthony Richardson isn't playing, there's nothing that redeeming about watching them play. And the Jaguars just look really bad. And I think Peterson's going to get fired.
Yeah, like I would say there's at least something on the Jaguars to watch there that I'd be interested in. My other game that I was going for was the Raiders and the Broncos. Devontae Adams is now officially requested a trade, so he will not be playing.
Yep. Really? He has? I heard he might go to the Steelers or the Saints. Is that true?
It is official. We're getting a paper, rock, scissors right here between the Steelers and Saints. He's going to one of these teams, guaranteed. He's probably going to be in the Jets. But no, but the Raiders without Devontae Adams, Gardner Minshew leading them against. I mean, Denver might have the best defense in football. Denver does have the best defense in football right now. Bo Nix is terrible though. Absolutely terrible. And if I don't see something that's like, oh, well, let's give him 6 more games and he's going to figure it out. Like, he looks bad. And the Minshew's going to look really bad against this defense. So Minshew, who looks bad, versus Bo Nix, who is bad, I don't like it.
Yeah, that one. And honestly, Bears Panthers isn't attractive to me either. I don't have any interest in watching Andy Dalton play football anymore. I'm over Caleb Williams. The only intriguing thing about this game is DJ Moore going to walk off the field and quit? Like, that's the curious part of it. So maybe I would watch that. So maybe
Caleb Williams was better last week. He took the feedback from 2 weeks ago and made an improvement. And he's keeping the ball closer to the line of scrimmage. I am interested in the Carolina thing. I do want to see what Jonathan Brooks looks like. It looks like he's going to be activated maybe this week, maybe not till the next week. That's kind of up in the air. But I think he's a talented running back, and I'm curious to see if he's going to be good at this level.
All right. What any final thoughts on this week coming in week 5?
No. I mean, it's I'm hoping that maybe in the next couple of weeks we start seeing some separation and we can start really, laying down some ideas about who's leading these divisions and who needs to kind of make some changes. I would really like to see some people coming back from injury and we can see these teams at full strength. It feels like we're seeing a lot of, teams losing due to injury right now. And I don't know if we're hearing a lot about short-term injuries. What about you? Anything, any overall thoughts about this week?
I'll say this. This kind of reminds me of 2 weeks ago when we did this show and we were like, what a horrible slate of games. And then it turned out to be really fun and really entertaining. And I think that this could be one of those weeks where even though Dolphins Patriots we both agreed is the dud of the week, maybe it turns into an entertaining football game. You just never know.
Stop it. Not that one. Pick a different
Come
one.
on, man. I got to appease everybody. I try my best. But hey, you got London games, NFC South on Thursday night. You got all Sunday football. It's going to be a great weekend. I can't complain because the alternative is no football. So I'll take crappy football and some crap games over no football at all. That's my theory. But what do you got going on at the Dome Patrol, and where can people find you on social media?
Yeah, we're got a game preview coming out in the next couple of days against the Chiefs. Playing them on Monday Night Football. You can come and chat with us on X at Dome Patrol PCast, or find me at HoodatWesley13. How can we find you, Jeff?
You can find me at the Steel Curtain Network or steelcurtainnetwork.com. If you want to enjoy the written word, I write articles as well. You can find me on X at jhartman, HARTMAN_PIT. But that's a wrap for your viewing pleasure. Enjoy this week's games. Wesley, we'll talk next week, man. Take it easy.
See you.